What is up, my friend? Welcome to episode number 62 of the Anthony John Amyx podcast, all about why you should hire a life coach and how life coaching can help you grow your business. On this episode, I'm bringing on a baller personal business and relationship coach named Matt Laughlin. Currently, he's the coach for one of my really good friends, and I've heard some just amazing, stellar things about him. So I thought, why not bring him onto the show and ask him every single question I could think of about why life coaching actually changes lives and changes businesses. So if you've ever thought about hiring a coach before, or if you've ever been wondering, man, would it really serve you? Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Anthony John Amyx podcast, the one and only podcast designed to help you become unstoppable in life and business. My name is Anthony John Amyx. My friends call me AJ, and my goal with this podcast is to help you remember who you truly are so you can maintain your center in the chaos, embody your potential, and unlock freedom in your life and business. That being said, let's get into today's show.
All right, welcome back. I'm really excited about this episode because it's not often that I get to jam with incredible, highly talented life coaches who also understand the game of business. It's a rarity. And today's guest knows both sides of the game extremely well, so I'm super pumped about that. His name is Matt Laughlin. He's a personal business and relationship coach. He's one of the few who are extremely good and enjoy diving deep with the right people. He's a former therapist, and while most therapists, help you overcome emotional obstacles, it seems like they don't really catalyze breakthroughs and being and action. At least that's my story. And many coaches may enhance performance, but they fail, it seems, to address the reality of human suffering or what actually moves the spirit. Matt likes to draw from both disciplines, coaching and psychotherapy and beyond, and working with him is a generative, creative, and healing process. He doesn't really follow a set program. Instead, his coaching is shaped by who you are, what you hold dear to you, and what you seek to create or overcome. Now, before I bring Matt on, I want to let you know I'm hosting a free online training to help people learn the 3 ancient secrets to breaking through to a new level of freedom, purpose, and success. This training, it will rock your world, guaranteed. People have already signed up, and they are chomping at the bit to get access to the free training. Now, you can reserve your spot by going to trainingwithaj.com. Again, that's www.trainingwithaj.com. And of course, when you register, make sure you add it to your calendar so you don't miss it. Now, with that being said, let's bring today's guest onto the podcast. Matt, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Hey, AJ, great to be here, man. Thank you.
Yeah, dude. I've heard amazing things about you from one of my good friends, Mr. Jonathan Heston. And it's not every day that I get to talk to somebody who has a depth of knowledge in both what I feel like is the life business and also the business. So I'm really excited to hear what we get into today. And before we get into today's topic, I'm curious, how did you go from therapy into coaching? Why didn't you just stay in the therapy world rather than coming to the coaching world?
Yeah, that's a great question. I did my master's in Boulder, Colorado at a university called Naropa, and I got a master's in what's called contemplative psychotherapy. And it was a 3-year program with a huge emphasis on meditation and mindfulness, which drew me to it. And we did 2 1-month meditation retreats in the first couple of years. And so, the real reason I switched was more pragmatic life change. So I was down, I graduated, I did my 2,000 clinical hours. I got licensed as a counselor in the state of Colorado, and I built a private practice. So I did that for about 6-7 years. And then my wife and I grew up in the Northwest, and I just never felt like I wanted to set roots in Colorado. I didn't have family down there. I love the beauty of it, but the Pacific Northwest is just inwardly where I want it to be.
Awesome.
And it's a great question because at the time I was, praying about it, trying to discern, and we felt really called to move to the Northwest. So I picked Coeur d'Alene. I was always fond of it. I grew up in neighboring Spokane, Washington, but Coeur d'Alene's a smaller lake mountain town, as you know. And so it was kind of a combo. I was dissatisfied with the downside of the limitation of the psychotherapeutic context. So and I was always, I had a greater affinity to work with what I would call higher functioning clientele. I have a real heart for people in the throes of a huge addiction or a super dysfunctional 19-year-old, let's say. But at the same time, I worked with attorneys, business owners, doctors, that kind of. And so I feel like, I just didn't feel like I could fully express like what I wanted to express within the confines of just the psychotherapeutic model. And then also just practically at that time, I ran that business as a clinician, not a business owner. So I would see as many people as I could see in a week at my hourly rate, but it wasn't really a scalable business. And I wanted to be able to buy a home so my wife could stay home with the kids. And so that humbled me to just look into like, okay, I need to, at least the model I was doing my psychotherapy practice at the time, I wasn't earning enough to pull her out of work and do that. So I looked into business opportunities, and I found a company that they specialize in niche magazine publications all across the country. It's probably like a $300 million company and two company. So I launched a couple local magazines that reached like the top producing real estate agents here in Coeur d'Alene. I have another one. And that really gave me a great training in just sales and business. And quickly I was promoted to a leadership position in the company where, kind of like in real estate with Keller Williams or other companies, they have their internal MAPS coaches. They all, basically in a large corporation, they promote top salespeople that are great coaches. And so I did that for 5 years, and I love that in terms of coaching other business owners all across the country. But then again, that limited context, like coaching within a company, in the end, you're really driving just sales. It's a little different than the whole dimension of a person. Like I was their sales leader coach, not their everything coach, so to speak. And then, so I decided last fall, or really last summer, to step down from that position and open my own coaching life business and just blend it all together. And I really attract people that are drawn to that, like the depth of the psychotherapeutic background together with a more pragmatic, performance-based kind of coaching perspective. So
Awesome.
It just kind of unfolded that way. It wasn't never a master plan.
Awesome. Do you find that you can get better results without the confines of the therapeutic license, or is having the confines of the therapeutic license like actually better?
Well, I'm not totally sure I understand the question. Like,
So let me rephrase it again. There's things you can do as a coach. There's things you can say, and there's places in which you can take someone as a coach that I don't think you can do as a therapist. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
I think, well, there's therapists that like practice as life coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And you could certainly, it's more like the overall arc of the context. Like people typically, when they go to therapy, it's you, and people are drawn to this for coaching, but it's a different level. Like often people go to therapy when the pain, it's a difference between, I heard this analogy in graduate school in some retreat, like the difference between having a hair in your hand, your mouth, and your eye. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I haven't. No.
So like I would characterize the people who are drawn to coaches, they're really devoted to a potentiality, something they're inspired by, but they're also struggling. So they're both. And when they seek out it, it's kind of like having a hair in your hand, you could hardly feel it, right? So for people who are drawn to life business coaches, if when you have a hair in your mouth, you could feel it. You kind of stop what you're doing. You're like, I got a hair in my mouth. And if you have one in your eye, you stop everything. You're like, I'm going to get this out of my eye. And I think that reflects the devotion, like how devoted people are to fulfilling their potential in something. And so the coaching client is like a hair in a mouth, eye person. They're like, I cannot stand that I cannot shift my business. And it's eating me up. I can't stand that I'm not more sweet, loving, and forgiving to people day to day. Like, because of their spiritual commitment, there's a lot of pain just when they fall short of that.
Yeah.
And whereas therapy, it's not that you don't get spiritually committed or motivated people.
Sure.
The majority of people that go to therapy, they're in need of true just healing, man. Like they, massive divorce. Well, you get a bunch of people in there, an active debilitating addiction. So my heart out of compassion loves that. Like there's depths you can go to, and there's a certain respect for the power of the therapeutic relationship I don't see in the Wild West of coaching, you know.
Totally. Yeah.
People are just like Wild West out there and casual with it all. There's just profound transferences and all sorts of stuff going on under the surface. So yeah, I would pragmatically, for me, I'm really careful with all my clients. Like, I have to be like, I look, I'm not practicing therapy with you.
Right.
I'm going to draw from that experience, but I'm a coach.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
here's why I bring that distinction up. So I went to my first therapist last year after the birth of my daughter. I was like in this pit of apathy. I ended up being clinically diagnosed with postpartum depression for men, which I didn't even know that was possible, but apparently 1 in 10 men have postpartum depression, and I was one of those 10. And so I was like visualizing myself blowing my head off in the garage. I was in a super dark place. And so I was like trying all of the tools that I knew, meditation, weightlifting, like shifting. And I just was like in apathy. So I reached out to the midwife. She was like, hey, here's 3 ladies. And I went through research. I was like, I don't think you can handle me.
Yeah.
You may have a chance. I'll give you a chance. So I went over to this lady and we ended up doing EMDR therapy for 8 weeks. But what I found, because I'm more of the hair in the eye guy, I'm like, can I just pay for you for the whole day? Like, can I just buy you for 2 days so we can just get this done? Like, I don't care what it costs. Just tell me we can get it done faster. And she was like, well, it's just part of therapy. Sometimes it takes long. And I'm like, no, I can process very, very quickly. Let's just go. Let's go. So that's where I found the distinction of like, oh, this works. Yet there's people who want and have the capacity to go faster. And the confines of that then hinders the results in which somebody can create in a quicker amount of time. Because at that time, I was also thinking about going back and getting my license for therapy. But then once I had that experience, I was like, nope, no confines for me. I can't do the confines.
Yeah. There's a definite, I could totally, I couldn't stand it's not so much what's there, it's the absence of what you're talking about. Like, what's there is great, but it's like, there isn't that highly committed, kind of that entrepreneurial business mindset that you would bring into the inner experience. I will say, in defense of it, something I see absent with coaches is like, at another level, at a deeper layer, semi-unconscious levels, like particularly people who explore their dreams or just presume, there's totally unconscious aspects of myself that I couldn't get to in 48 hours. I'll drop 10 grand. I'll work with you in 48 hours.
Totally.
And you aren't getting to it in 48 hours. And like, there's a beauty to, this also unfolds in coaching. With a great coach, you unfold layers, and it's a function of time. And so you have to take that 48 hours and live 8 weeks of it in order to confront something. It won't even surface for 8 weeks. So, but yeah, I hear what you mean. Yeah, it just wasn't the fullest expression of who I wanted to be in the world, that container.
Awesome. And I remember asking her to because we were done at the 8 weeks. And so she's like, what's next? And I was like, I feel like I want to put cement in this well. I never want to go into the pit ever again. And she's like, how do you think of that? And I'm like, I'm being led in my journal to do psilocybin mushrooms. That sounds crazy. I don't even know what that looks like or who to contact, but that's where I'm being led to. And she's like, let me know how that goes. It was so funny.
I always tell people, it's like all coaches, like interview 5 therapists before you just to get to see what they're comfortable with. And
Awesome,
cool.
Man. Well, dude, why do you think somebody should work with a life coach? I feel like it's a buzzword. I feel like people think it's just something that almost wealthy people do or privileged people do, or it's a nice thing to have. Why do you think somebody should work with a life coach?
Just anybody or a business owner? Like, what's the context?
Yeah, anybody, really. Like, if we could put on a big hat and really encourage anybody to work with a life coach. I mean, my experience has been, I always have one. It serves me massively in every single area of life.
Yeah.
And I feel like if more people would embrace the concept rather than thinking they need, at least here in Texas, and I would say probably in the West in general, we need to pull ourselves up from our bootstraps and do it ourselves because, only weak people have life coaches, only hippie people have life coaches. I think it would benefit every single human being if they'd be open to the potentiality of it.
Yeah. You remind me of some of them I've read a year or two ago. you probably read him. Have you read Nisargadatta Maharaj? He didn't write. There's a book called I Am That, and it's his dialogues. Have you ever
I
read
haven't
that?
read that one, no.
So he's a sage out of like India, and I say all that lightly, like, because there's probably 95% of sages are, wackadoodle, but there's some, I would say check him out. Like he's but he said something like that struck me when I was reading one of these, basically like satsangs, like people from all over the West and Europe would go down to India. He died in like, I think 84. So there's actually verbatim recordings of his dialogues. So I love to read his dialogues. And in one of them, he talked about like you can only help people but through their desires. Like I mean, desires, people's personal desires and aims are so strong that that's the segue to like serve them.
Yeah.
And so I would say, in answer to your question, like if people are serious about fulfilling what's dear to them in life and their aims, like really serious about it, the higher they go, they're going to be faced with the humble recognition of their fallibility and their own limitations. I do believe hypothetically you don't need a coach,
Sure.
but it's just a really rare soul that has the inner fortitude to like turn their awareness and consciousness on themselves with incredible inner honesty and surface those things. There are people like that, the stuff surfaces. And so, yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is that people can only experience a breakthrough experientially, and that in the coaching process stirs that whole process up in their awareness and in their life. And if you want access to like a powerful change in your life, it's only by way of some sort of inner experience, and the coaching process does that. It's not that the coach is downloading anything. They may not have any information. I mean, they'll have some ideas and distinctions, but the process itself just brings stuff up, and it brings up the obstacles, and in the what would you call it, the breakdowns, the failures of the process, they can confront things that they can't locate on their own as readily. Like you can't smell your own nose. It's like, I think coaching does give access to the unconscious. Like, I think it really does, or semi-unconscious. It surfaces things. And I just don't know of a better way. There's also something mysterious about it, like something incredibly healing of being with another human being, and not only sharing what's most painful and shameful to you, like, and terrifying to you, and what's dear to you. We rarely touch either end of that spectrum in any day-to-day conversation. I mean, you may with your spouse, but it's a fragment because you got kids and things to do and you're all pragmatics. But how often do you actually converse on either end of that spectrum? Like, so, when you touch those spectrums, things get surfaced. I mean, you get access to clarity and power that it's really hard to do on your own.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would probably answer that question differently next Tuesday. That's what came to mind.
So since coaching space right now is like this wild, wild west world, how does somebody actually go find a good, like a legitimate coach? I am going to use the word legitimate because I do believe there's a difference between everybody and their pet monkey being a coach. So how does somebody like sort through all of that nonsense?
Well, the thing I always said when I was a therapist would be like, I think at the time, I probably would still direct people here. Psychology today seems to be the domain where therapists hang their shingle and you read their bios. And then I would always tell people to, be patient with yourself and have 5 free consultations. Typically a therapist would do that. And then I would always add there's two answers that come to mind. That's a great question because you're never going to know for sure if you're with the right coach. There's always an element of a leap of faith. There just is. So I would say for coaching, like, don't just have a conversation with a savvy coach where you're sold into coaching, even out of good intentions. Have like 4. Do the 4. Most coaches will have some sort of communication that doesn't cost anything to explore the possibility of coaching with them. And then I think this next part to your question is the only real metric, if you found the right man or woman, is examine the inner growth that unfolds in the coming months. I mean, it's a leap of faith before that. I mean, you could look at, everybody's going to look at resumes and like the optics. Do they have, of course, it always depends on like, if you have real specific strategies, like you and Jonathan are really excellent at coaching business owners online, man. So like they, you have very specific depth in certain domains that answers the question for itself if they trust you guys, like, because you're so good at what you do. But yeah, broadly have 5 or 6 conversations. If you're going like more like, hey, I just need an all-purpose coach for my life, and then that'll impact me as a business owner, have like 5 conversations.
So where's the tension in this? Because some people in the online business game, that's the path in which I can speak from. If they're teaching coaches or if they're teaching consultants to sell what we would call high ticket things over $1,000 or $3,000, which typically a good coach is going to cost more than that.
Yeah.
Then they would be like, only do one sales call essentially, and they're either in or they're out. And so here you are recommending them having multiple. Say it again.
They would coach prospective clients to only do like, what do you mean? Like,
yeah, they would say, cool. If you're a coach, they'd be like, they would teach you how to run a sales call, be an hour-long deep dive sales call. And at the end of that sales call, there's going to be a decision made. And a good person would be able to hold space and capacity and potentiality for a yes or no. They're not attached to the yes or no.
Yeah.
Right. But they're holding space for it. And they're really going to encourage the person who reached out to have the free session to make a decision. I do this personally, and I'll just tell them blatantly, I'm unattached, just make a decision. How does somebody have the tension in that without going into these, let's say they're going to have 5 conversations and they're not going to feel guilty of being like, I'm not trusting myself to make a decision. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would, I mean, if they're forthright about it from the beginning, like, and I think people who are high level coaching and business sales, they respect sales, like they get it. And if people come with a heart, they're going to get clear that day. And here's what I'd recommend. Like, so I went to speak, I dropped $5,000 to be with Steve Hardison, the ultimate coach. You're probably familiar with him. And it was an incredible experience. And now he runs his model differently. There's no like hard close after being with him to coach with him. But I had to actually be mindful of my speech with him. So just being in that session, partly out of just inspiration, I wanted to make a declaration like, Steve, I'm gonna drop $100K I do not have by February 1st and work with you, because I get thrilled, like, oh, throw your hat over the fence and conquer the world and make it happen. And then part of me wants to do it out of just inspiration. A part of me wanted to do that unconsciously to be a great client, to get his symbolic approval of me. There's a lot of elements that go on. So I would just say, for people, I mean, for the coaches listening to this, I wouldn't change your methodology. Like if I know I'm an excellent coach, and if I feel like whoever I'm sitting with, I know if they commit to me, it will bear major fruit in their life. I'm going to be like, we need to work together. However, and I'll go through that. And
sure.
I respect the sales method. I had no sales process as a therapist. And I think I could have helped a lot of people that I didn't quote close because I didn't even think about it. And they walked away. And had I taken a more clear stand for them and invited the opportunity. So I wouldn't say like any coach listening to this to get casual about how they close their prospective appointments. But if you're a prospective client shopping coaches, just be straight with them. Be like, look, I love sales. I love you want to close me. I know it's come from your heart. I'm seeing 4 people this week. and in sales, though, if you're a good coach, you pivot with that. So a first appointment, if your client's coming in with that, you're going to renegotiate the agreement. You're going to be like, well, good. By the end of the day, we're going to get clear on whether or not we need to schedule a second meeting. And then if that's the case, then we will schedule a second meeting. And then on that meeting, you will give me your final answer. That's what occurs to me, AJ.
Yeah, that's perfect. No, that's what I would encourage somebody to do. Cause I've had this happen to me. One of the people that I'm working with currently, they're like, hey, after we get done with this call, we have, we're going to talk to 2 more. I'm like, that's fantastic. And so we went through the whole thing. And at the end, I was like, I know you have 2 more people to talk to. So when are you talking to those people? Because I want you to commit to give me a yes or no by a date. I don't care what the date is.
Yeah.
You just tell me the
Yeah.
date that you're willing to commit to. And they told me Wednesday at da-da-da-da. So then I clarified and verified. And lo and
Yeah.
behold, Wednesday at that time, they said, yes, let's do it. Right.
Yeah.
So
And
it
you
was
should be
perfect.
confident. You should be confident that they shop you, because
Exactly.
they just say that. I mean, like, oh, I would be delighted that you go speak with other people for 2 hours. You'll please do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's
Awesome.
great.
What are some telltale signs that you found that like a good coach really has? Like with everybody going through certifications, some people just
Yeah.
deciding they're a coach. What are like some signs that somebody is a good coach?
I would say two things come to my mind. So when I went to Naropa, one thing I really appreciated about their model, there was this basic, I don't know if it's like a dictum or a principle they ascribe to, where in the contemplative psychotherapy program, they're like, your capacity as a therapist will in great measure just be a function of your capacity to be with your client no matter what surfaces, and not to respond out of some program or anxiety or need, or like to be with whatever goes down. Like, so that's why they made such an emphasis on meditation, like to be when you start to meditate at any level, I kind of more advocate daily contemplation, make your day a meditation, but I've done a lot of meditation, and there's like a lunatic on, it's like getting into a phone booth, and there's a lunatic, and it's your mind, and you're talking, so a lot of things come up. So a coach that really resists the temptation to fill silent spaces, at the end of a session, that really can be whole and complete within themselves, if they don't come with some perfect capture of the session and some key take home out of like anxiety to be a great coach, or out of wherever that comes from. So I would say on the one hand, like so, and very related to that is a second part, like letting go of any inner attachment to the outcome or to control or change your client. That's a real subtle inner thing. And I mean, I think that's an art, and it's largely a function of somebody's general spiritual maturity in life, like to sit with someone and really not have any emotional investment that they go a certain way or change, and not to muck around, because we all know it as a coaches when we lean too far into this space. Like I've experienced it many times, where I could tell when my psyche is now overly guiding with an aim in mind, and really hoping they go a certain way, and I'm trying to influence a decision. And like you almost like you share the karma of that, man. Now Carl Jung said something once that put me at peace about this. He said, even if you're bad in a session with a therapist, and you muck around too much like that, you try to control them, right? So he's like, just trust that their consciousness, like mud on a wall, what's really true for their spirit, like it might ripple in their life, but hopefully if you weren't like devious, they'll sort out what's true for them and come back to the next session and resume where. So yeah, I would say a great coach would be one that can be with whatever arises. Like I remember my first therapy session, the classic therapist joke is like, this woman, I was doing my 2,000 hours at this clinic, and she, God bless her, she had like a really hard life, reckless life, and she's just telling me about like just stuff I had never heard before, like from reckless sexual decisions, STDs, all these things, and just, and my thought was like, oh my God, this woman needs a therapist. And I was just sitting there like so freaked out, like I couldn't even be with her, like because I was practicing as a therapist. And so yeah, someone that can be with whatever arises without just like when you meditate, your thoughts and feelings, you're not supposed to do anything with them, you just radiantly let them be, and maybe just get bored with them or something. But
Sure.
and then being real, and this again, like the only way to experience this as a client is to spend a few months with someone. And then the other thing would be someone who gives you the freedom to make your own decisions as a client, so.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to unpack that a little bit more. I want to explore the paradox on that, because some people
Yeah.
could take that too far and they're like, okay, I'm going to hold space, I'm going to attach, and the client just shows up. So where's the tension in guiding somebody into their potentiality and also being unattached and kind of being that observer guide? Like there's almost like a dualistic tension
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that space.
It could be misinterpreted. Like I had this, one of my favorite mentors, psychiatrist, he was like someone who's suicidal. He joked, he was like he would get off his chair, grab him by the shirt, pull him forward and be like, go ahead, kill yourself. Like, there's like, that's serious yang energy.
Yep.
And so it's not like you're apathetic or passive or not, I think it's just, here's the difference. It's an inner awareness of what you're attached to. So I can reflect, say you're my client, AJ, I can reflect to you like I could take a stand for you and be like, AJ, look, you can do whatever you want to do, man, but if you want to be yourself in life, that's a total violation of everything you've ever told me what you stand for. Like, but they detect, it's like a great parent or spouse. Like, I think a lot of couples get hung up if there's no inner attachment that I need your approval in that remark. I don't need you to like me in that remark. And I don't even need you to agree in that moment. Like, I think in 12-step recoveries, they call it carrying the message, not the person. So it's a super subtle edge. I love it. It's such a great question, AJ, because it's like, yeah, it's a great question.
I tell people it's like a dance. Like to me, good coaches know when to push and pull. It's almost like, so I did fight training. I did boxing training with Guy Mesger, who's a former UFC world champion. He lives here in Dallas. He's a pretty good friend of mine. And in boxing, like a really good boxer, they know when to push forward with the yang, and then they also know when to pull back with the yin. And they also know when to just sit in the pocket and surrender to this being in the pocket and just be in there. And I think a good coach has like this intuitive sense where they know when to lean in and push, and then also when to pull back and just let them come.
Totally.
And it's almost like this dance. A really good coach they're master dancers. I don't know how to put it any other way.
Well, they're also they're unattached dancers, because sometimes they step too far, but that's okay. Like it all serves. Like it's totally okay, because if they're honest, loving, and unattached, they have no problem owning a shortcoming, or they don't have to defend that they step too far or lean too far in. And your client will kind of bat you away, just like your kids will be like, yeah, dad, shut up, yeah. But ultimately you get to a nugget, but they're going to be like, they smack your gloves out of their face.
Sure.
So, and if they're not good at smacking your gloves out of their face, you coach on that, So,
awesome. How would you define what life coaching is? I go to places and people are like, what do you do? And I'm like, life and business coach. And they're like, what is that? And I'm like, yeah, you're not going to understand. So let's not even talk about it. But how would you define what life coaching is?
Man. Oh, I don't even know. Well, I don't have a ready definition. When I was a therapist, I hated, this is the worst cocktail party thing. Like, what do you do? I'm a therapist. They're all like, people that's different than coach. Life coach is sort of like, oh, you can't get a real job or something like that. And like therapist is more like, are you effing psychoanalyzing me right now? So then they change their affect with you. But life coach, there's a what is a life coach? Well, I think that's answered just based on the coaching philosophy of the coach, So how I answer that would be very, very different probably than a lot of coaches. I don't think it's really, I would say that it's not answerable, because maybe 75% of coaches out there, their answer I would spit out of my mouth,
Sure.
Like, so.
So then let's go down a different avenue and see if we can come to the answer, which is, how does life coaching actually work then?
Yeah, same question in a way. And I would say, I'm actually working on this with Jonathan Heston.
The master messenger.
Yeah, he's awesome. So we're we're working out a training seminar where I cover what to me are 4 key distinctions, 4 principles and distinctions I work from as a coach. Like if I had to bring down to generalities, I work with all different people and everything. And So I can answer it. It'd be rough, but I can answer it in those four spaces if you wanted me to.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Yeah.
Crack at. So the first distinction is that I operate from. I actually think this is really important. This is why you need to have 5 conversations with 5 coaches, especially if you're a life coach. Business coach, look, they could be a Buddhist and you could be Jewish, but if they've got great strategy on business, run hard with them. It doesn't matter. But Carl Jung said, my job if I'm with a Jewish client or a Buddhist or a Christian, just to make them a better Jewish, Buddhist, or Christian. So in coaching, the first distinction I would say is that that which you seek and that which you want is already within you. Like, so that's the number one. That's like the number one premise. Like, that means you don't have to read a bunch to develop it. You don't have to go in search of it elsewhere. You don't have, you're not deficient. You actually have more capacity for love, fortitude, courage in you now. It's all there. It's all there. So like that reframe, well, if it's all there, then what? It kind of begs the question. And so I'm playing with analogies for this training to try to illustrate that. And like one that came to mind is, there's no analogy that'll answer that for everybody, but is like, if you had a child and they stepped into traffic, 9 out of 10 parents would not hesitate to lay down their life for their child, like to throw them aside. So in the final analysis, you have enough love and courage in you to just drop your life in an instant. It's just there. It's just there. Your kid's there. You get out of the way. You knock them out of the way. You get hit by a car. So how do you access that? How do you locate that within yourself? So the analogy on the idea that that's already within you. I love the classic analogy of the sun and the clouds. Like, even though it's cloudy, it doesn't mean the sun's not there.
Yeah.
It's there. It's shining. You just can't experience or see. You can't feel the radiance of the warmth that's within you, that's there. So coaching then is like, well, how do you recognize those clouds? How do you remove them? And so that leads to the second distinction, which is we're working out a distinction. Like, I like to operate as a coach from an awareness of the mind and the heart, like awareness in the heart, not the mind. I really see the mind as like a tool, and almost like if you pictured, like, say you have an orb and it's covered by glass, like a glass lens. The mind is the glass lens, and if it's really muddy with like bad habits, competing desires, blind spots, that luminous light inside the orb, it's opaque. It can't radiate through that glass. So part of coaching is the awareness that just, when you put awareness on that muck in the glass, it starts to clear it away. And then what? Then the mind, that glass becomes a clear tool. It reflects properly. It gives you clarity. When you need to use the mind, you're not run by your mind anymore. You rest more in the witness observer. I think that's a huge element of coaching, and that has to do with my second distinction, that coaching gives people access to experiencing who and what they are a little bit closer to the witness observer. And then classically, it goes further. Like, even witnessing and observing happens of its own. You wake up, it's just on. Like, that's not even really you, but that gets philosophical and abstract. Like, just even the witness observer is you, starts to, clear the mud in the lens. And then the third distinction is like, okay, well, what about like the whole active passive tension? Like, how do you bring things into being if you're not the mind? Like, what about the generative creative aspect of things? So I think that's where, like, things that I get really excited about, like any ontological approach to coaching gets into this. There's different seminars, Landmark, others like them, that I have not done. I've done all the Landmark seminars. I think there's one called Life something or other, but the getting people into conversations around commitment, declaration, honoring the word, and then laying that future out in front of them, and then in the coaching process, sorting out all the obstacles that come up as you pursue that, and try to be that in your life. And then the fourth distinction would be this one I haven't articulated for the seminar, but so this is just on the fly, but it'd be more really things are unfolding of their own. So, and if you just presume that's true, it's not your function as a person in coaching is not to do anything. It's just not to prevent the unfolding or the expression. That's that's a subtlety. Like most coaches, I would say, operate out of the identification as I am my mind, my thoughts. I just need better thoughts, and I'm the doer. And I think it's a big total contextual difference to operate like I'm not the doer. I'm not the doer. So if I'm not doing it, what's my function? My function is to not prevent the natural expression of my heart and what I am. So that's how I would answer. Like,
Love that.
that's kind of an off the cuff philosophical look at how I view the coaching process.
It's so good. And on that fourth distinction, Jeremy Eugene Wilson taught me kind of the paradox of I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my body. And at the same time, I am my thoughts, I am my body, I am my emotions.
Yeah.
But I'm the soul in control who can observe all of these and see which one's empowering me and which one's disempowering me, and then choose moment by moment by moment to then create whatever it is that I want to create. That's a huge thing.
Yeah. And you're responsible for them. Like,
Exactly.
even though, you got to take care of your inner mammal,
Totally.
Gets cranky if it doesn't sleep right and eat right. And so
Totally.
Yeah, that's great.
What are your thoughts on some of the coaches who take your first distinction a little bit too far? And what I mean by that is they're like, okay, I'm going to come in, I'm going to coach somebody. And they have all the answers with them. So they just keep asking question after question, rather than sometimes coming back into the paradox to like give a direction, like turn right. Like you're struggling to turn left, turn right.
Yeah.
I experienced this recently in a business environment, and it pissed me off because I came in, I was like, hey, we're running this beta experience. What are some questions that you guys have asked to get some good feedback from previous weeks? And one of the coaches, God bless him, was like, well, the questions are in with you. What questions would you ask? I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah, right.
I wouldn't be asking. I know they're in me. I can create them, but I just wanted to see what you guys have tried. So
yeah. No, if anything, my temperament, and your temperament probably is like this too. I would err, if anything, on giving too many ideas, just I probably fall flat there. But yeah, for the opposite, I think that's like the letter of the law, the spirit of the law. That's like I view my, like all the time, like, I think it's just with humility, because I think incredible ideas come through my mouth to the client that were not in my brain prior to the session. And they're not even part of a toolbox that I use for every client. It's just like, dude, I don't know, like as a listener to what you're saying, it seems like there's this huge path for this, and they're like, and then they're just, you could see it in the timbre of their voice. If you're reflecting truth, it'll click inside them, and you feel tingles in your chakra, your head, and you're like grateful to be the messenger.
Yes.
But again, yeah. No, that's how I'd answer that question. It gets, I mean, if you're parenting, I don't know. It's like people mix up levels. Like, I'm going to tell my damn 6-year-old what he can and can't do a lot. I'm not gonna be like, well, what do you think you should do? Because I got to get in the damn car and get out. I'm like, no, A or B. So I don't know. You got to be. That'll come through. You're like, sometimes you're like that with your clients. Other times you're, quite quiet.
Yeah. It comes back to that dance. It really does come back to that dance. No one to push or pull. What have you found that seems to really move the needle when it comes to business?
Helping a client generate more business or improve their business?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great question. I was talking to Jonathan about this. I'm building out like a little background thing for the training that I'm developing.
Perfect.
And in the background, so in my company, I was in maybe the top 10 of like 50 leaders for like actually moving the commissions, because you can have conversations with people, but does their income grow or whatever? Right. And so, what's like a major leverage point generally to help people up level their earning performance? Is that kind of like?
Yep. It could even be their leadership ability too.
Yeah. I'm just rattling. I think I'm mentally going through current clients that are doing that. Like I have a builder who's up leveling it.
Is it just increasing their capacity to be, like opening up their being capacity? Like if we open up someone's being capacity, does it automatically increase their doing capacity?
Um, it would change the quality of their experience of the doing. Some people I mean, some of the most top earning performers, the drive is neurotic.
Yeah.
And I mean, so I think it would increase, it would diminish a sense of efforting and give them more access to effortlessness. And in many people get them into action without that yin and that battle back and forth of trying real hard, getting exhausted, trying hard again, and that whole zigzag. So I would say, yeah, I don't know that I think the coaching process gives people more clarity, and it helps them come out of what they are more in their decisions to act.
Sure.
Because love is tireless. You know what I mean? Like there's just like right now I'm in the habit. I have a 4 and an almost 7-year-old. The almost 7-year-old, it stopped to a great deal, but occasionally still wets the bed. And then the 4-year-old. So we put them in bed at like 7:30, but every night I go in there late to pee them both, pick them up out of bed. I'm not bothered. I mean, if I forget and I fall asleep, my wife like taps me. I'm like, shit, you know what I mean? Like, but like that doesn't bother me. Like, and there's so many things that out of love, you just have an experience of tirelessness. So I think helping people sanctify their business activities and come out of lovingness, and out of a commitment to their highest ideal gives them access to a tirelessness. Like it's just not as tiring to act, and there's a more steady, constant action over time.
Yeah, exactly. One of the pictures Jonathan and I had been working with is it's like this bicycle of purpose and profits. If purpose and profits was a bicycle, like you can picture that. And typically for most high achieving people, production people, they're riding this bicycle up their chosen mountain. And that mountain, the top of that mountain is different things for different people, different levels of income, different sizes of teams, selling a business, whatever it is, different things for different people. And it's perfect. And it's like they're trying to ride up the mountain with one pedal, which is like do.
Yeah, it's jerky. Yeah,
And it's
hard.
jerky and it's exhausting. And so people go through these phases of building and burning and building and burning and building and burning. And they usually will get to the top because they're pretty gritty people typically.
Yeah.
But then they'll get there and they're like, oh, what's the point? When some other cultures will approach the pedal, the bicycle purpose and profits from one other pedal, which is just the being pedal. Like if we looked at the Eastern, they may be like visualization and affirmations and law of attraction and all of this stuff. And some of them get to the top of the mountain, but it may take them longer than they thought. And there's still a lot of stress, even in just using that one single being pedal. But it's like if we could marry the two and understand the bicycle has two pedals, and it's not, I either use being piece and all of the technology and science and spiritual experiences there, or the doing, it's both. And we can use both of them. This is now where we're starting to generate a lot more momentum and a lot more power with a lot less effort and a lot less force to propel us to the top of the mountain. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. Definitely the one pedal analogy is, I think most of us can relate to that, you know?
Yeah. And I'm excited about where we're at in history right now, because I believe we're kind of at a place where consciousness at large, where we kind of used to be like separate. The West had their doing bucket and we're really great, and Christians were amazing and Jewish people were amazing at doing. And then we had other philosophies from the East who were all about being. And I feel like consciousness, or humanity's consciousness, is a place where those two can coexist in a happy place now. And those who are open to allowing those two philosophies, the being and the doing, the East and the West, to really overlap, where those overlap is where there's peace, where there's purpose, and where there's profits that are like found in joy and freedom. It doesn't mean that there's not contrast. I mean, part of the game of being a human being is we're going to have contrast, but there's a lot more freedom and joy in that contrast. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I would agree that it's kind of an exciting time to look at one's consciousness in the history of humanity. Just last 50 years, really?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the access we all have to all of that, and it's a wild adventure.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why do you think a lot of people get stuck into the trap of looking externally to produce results that are in their hearts rather than starting to go inside themselves?
Well, the presumption is that it will be painful to look inside themselves. I think maybe that's one. There's a rule in psychotherapy that, like, in terms of the boxing dance, to use your analogy, like, you don't come at someone with a real hard right hook unless you know their internal superego is how compassionate they're going to be with themselves when you reflect back something really about them, like a real, like, you're progressing in therapy when you discover something about yourself that you can't eat your next meal because you're like, oh my god, I've been like, because there's a lot of regret and pain. So I think one, it's a lot easier, and by nature we project and we get to know ourselves by our projections, and so it's not like it's a bad thing, but we project on this person and have thoughts and feelings about them, and if we're at all inward, we're like, why do I think about them that way and stuff. But looking within oneself, I think one of the big, if there was two dogs to brave, one of them would be how savage people can be with themselves. So, and the shift work you guys do, it was interesting that I picked Jonathan's brain a little bit about, I really respected the way he characterized that you guys have a sensitivity to that, like, the work you do, you're going to surface things and stuff. So that's you're being a steward of your responsibility as a coach. But I think, I think that'd be one barrier. People are afraid. And then the other barrier, it's like a leap of faith, because it's implicitly looking within implies that you at the moment don't have access or see a thing. So it just doesn't seem worthwhile. It doesn't seem like it'll bear fruit. You're taking those first steps on faith, and that's everyone. Like, so you're a highly committed person I don't know you personally, but like my impression is you're highly devoted to your personal spiritual development in life. Like but like there's caps for you and coming on the horizon that are going to require leaps of faith for you to go to another level of understanding. So it never ends. And so for people to either enter the path or carry on it requires like a fortitude, a willingness to get uncomfortable. Like, people who can handle that discomfort hire a life coach like you have over time. They're just like, look, it's part and parcel of being a human being. I'm willing to like get into the mud because I know it bears fruit and I have faith that it's worth it. So those are the things, the quick answers.
Yeah, I'm like at a phase in life where if I become aware of an area where I have an inadequacy or a limitation, I like dive into the fire as fast as humanly possible. And I don't want to play around. Like, I want to go to the deepest, darkest, nastiest pit as fast as humanly possible, because I know I have the capacity to propel like up. And one of the things I read with Power versus Force with Dr. David Hawkins and the whole emotional scale of consciousness, one of the things that we teach within Inside Shift is like the surrender process is usually the piece that propels somebody out of this loop of pressure that most people experience and then into a place of power. But it's almost like a spring. Like if you push a spring down just a little bit, like if you just allow a little bit of anger or a little bit of guilt, then your capacity to come back to love and service is just a little bit. But if you allow yourself to go all the way down, almost like if you could take that scale of consciousness and think of like that as the spring from enlightenment to death. You're willing to go all the way to death, and that spring is. Then when you allow it and release it, it goes. And you're like back in massive amounts of love and power. And that's kind of the place where I get to play at personally. And it's a lot of fun.
I love that distinction. That Dr. Hawkins, I heard him say once in like a seminar satsang I was at, where he said, you can only go as high as you've once been low.
Yeah.
And he's like, the capacity to look at the low paradoxically reflects how high you're able to go. And I was telling Jonathan this actually recently, that I'd heard this from somebody, a local business owner I know, who she's like been 20 years in Alcoholics Anonymous. And then there's this guy in there who's apparently a very reputable local business owner, very healthy, beautiful life, but he's been sober for 32 years, but he goes to AA meetings every day. And he said, someone asked him why he did that. And he said, I want my last drunk to be as fresh as this cup of coffee sitting in front of me. And I think it really speaks to what you're saying. Like, if you have the capacity to look at the lows and the darkest things about yourself or humanity, and it at so many levels, it gives you access to the high. And it doesn't mean that, I like Hawkins' the way he phrased that off the fly. It wasn't something he wrote, but just like, you can only go as high as you've once been low. It's not like you have to hang out in the lows or be run by the lows.
Exactly.
You just have to be willing to, here, this is coming to mind. A really powerful image that demonstrates this. Like, I watched this documentary on Mother Teresa, and it showed one of the sisters of, I think they're Sisters of Charity, I think it's what it's called. And so moving. And it showed this woman holding this sister holding, I don't know what condition the boy had, but his arms were really tight and he was frothing at the lips, and he was probably like 11 and just really emaciated and just couldn't hold his body together. And he was just in this hugely despairing, distressing state. And she grabbed his cheeks in her hand, and she just held him, kind of like gently rocked with him, and like looked right at him the whole time. And you watch, like, he stopped shaking, and he got calm, and his shoulders relaxed. And it gets me moved just talking about it. Like, it takes such courage and compassion to actually be around that kind of suffering.
Yep.
Like, it takes a noble spirit to work with those kinds of populations every day. It takes that capacity. So I think that's what came to mind in what you were sharing.
Yeah.
Like,
one of the illustrations we always share at our Uprising event and also inside Project Shift is like, we talk about this idea of splintering, which is, at our core, at our center, at our essence, like, we're unlimited potential. We're God in flesh, every single human being on the planet with unlimited capabilities, capacity.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as we're going through life, an event happens and we create a persona, and we like splinter away and splinter away and splinter away and we splinter away. And those things served us. Like, they usually, when we splinter away from our essence, we do it because it's a way for us to gain security or acceptance at whatever ages that happens. And it doesn't mean it just happened in childhood. I mean, man, it could happen when you're 21 or 22, or it could happen right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But if we can become aware of that, then we can start reintegrating those parts of ourselves. And some of those times, it's like we have locked that part of us in a closet, and we're like, nope, that part doesn't serve me. And we've locked that, and we have to go be willing to open up that closet door and be with that part of ourselves, not to seek to fix it, because if we seek to fix it, then we're seeing it as broken. Just like Mother Teresa in the story, she's not trying to fix the child. She's just seeking to genuinely understand and be with, and in the understanding and being with, the healing automatically occurs. And so parts of us are the same. But the other picture that we use, it's almost like a prisoner. And Jonathan always tells this story of, like, there was this is a fictitious story, I believe, but imagine that, there was a World War II veteran who was captured by the Nazis, and he's been in a prison camp, and he's been there for, I don't know how long, 2 years, and he's completely emancipated. But our soldiers come in because the war is over, and they're like, yo, you're free. And they see this guy who's just like skin and bones, and he's laying in the dark corner in his own piss and poop. And the soldier, rather than saying, come on, get out of the poop, come on, we're free, he's kind of like Mother Teresa, where he just sets his gun by the door, walks into the pit with the man, lays in the pee and the poop with the guy, and just holds the man. And for us, like, as human beings, there's parts of ourselves which are that. They are the prisoner who has been beat down, whether we've done it or other human beings have done it. Typically, oftentimes it's usually we're doing it to ourselves. But we get to go be with that person, just as Mother Teresa was with this boy. And in that being with that piece of us, we start reintegrating that and, like, getting into a new place of power. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. It's a powerful analogy. It reminds me, can I tell you a war story I heard that is like that? Do we have time?
Course.
Yeah. No, that's really powerful. A local man, he's now deceased, a man in his 70s, told me about this, about his father. Must have been World War II. But he, or maybe it was Vietnam. probably World War II, but the man was really blown up in his guts and everything, and like a triage doctor, he just required so much care. They had to let him. They couldn't care for him because otherwise 10 other soldiers would die. So they told this soldier, like, the only way this man's going to live is if someone doesn't sleep and just is at his side 24/7. We have no one, but if you want to do it, and you have to like bathe his wounds and just reapply the gauze, and for 8-9 days straight, no sleep. So this soldier did this to this man. Wow. And then, they never knew one another, went on their ways or whatever. Like, he's probably still kind of half coma when they took him to the States or the ship or whatever. And so this man who's now deceased was the one that was wounded and cared for, was walking downtown Coeur d'Alene. And it used to be when the interstate went through the city, so there were semis in the downtown street, and he heard this like these brakes and this huge semi truck. I got it flipped. The man here locally was the one who put the gauze on the man. So anyway, so he's just walking out, and this huge burly trucker guy gets out of the truck, runs up to him, and embraces the man, and he puts his hands on his face. He's like, "I'll never forget that face." And Mr. Yates, the man who had put the gauze on, didn't know who he was. Like, and he was like, "Who are you?" He's like, "I'll never forget that face. You saved my life. You put gauze." He lay there staring at the man's face for days, and it was burned in his memory. And like those war analogies are so powerful. I love it because it just demonstrates like what we're capable of in terms of, not even sleeping, just to love another man in his need.
Exactly. That's powerful, man.
Yeah, wasn't it? Yeah, I was like, there should be a book about that or something. But
for sure.
Yeah.
Dude, if you could go back in time and give your younger self some wisdom that would help you collapse time and get results, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh, that's the classic, like, all those failures and mistakes serve a function now. So I heard a story about like a gentleman who a saint asked him, Padre Pio, or this man asked Padre Pio, like, or Padre Pio, he's in the Catholic Church, a saint, and this man asked him, or Padre Pio asked him, like, "Why don't you ask me to pray for you?" And he's like, "Well, Father, all those awful things I went through brought me closer to God, and I wouldn't want them changed." So when I heard that, I could definitely feel that in terms of my own mistakes and stuff, outside the ones where I may have harmed another out of my ignorance and stuff. But yeah, my younger self, I would have handled money differently. I wouldn't have borrowed money. So I would handle money the way I handle money now, with my 45, my gray hairs of wisdom on my chin. I guess the biggest thing would be have the courage to be what I am. There's a lot of, even at the level of where I am today, it takes a lot of courage just to be who you are in your work and in your relationships without any, not that you're cavalier about it, but without any concern for the approval of others, and just I would say, not act to have the courage to be who I was at the time without apology,
Awesome.
So, yeah, that would be one.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Dude, if somebody takes your advice that they've listened to on this show, what do you know is possible for them?
Well, the biggest distinction is they already have what they seek and need within them. So then it's just a function of their earnestness and willingness to turn to that and locate that within themselves now before they need it later, to develop that and put their awareness on it. And so I would say two things. Like, it's not like everything's possible for them. But I think what's possible is their peace in that recognition. And then, like, Carl Jung talks a lot about this midlife, like the level of neurosis in the stages of life. A young person, they'll be depressed and restless and anxious to the degree to which they don't feel like they can do a thing and accomplish a thing. So if you meet like a 30-year-old who's really depressed and anxious, they don't have a sense like, I can do agency. 35 to 55, and this bears out in my coaching, there's a dual process of coming to real peace of accepting the errors and decisions we've made in life and the doors they've closed forever, and then being a steward of all the opportunity that glistens before someone. So if someone's in that camp, and if they were to apply the distinctions I shared, they would access like a real peace and fulfillment about their past. They're 52 years old, they're whole and complete, and there's a peace and forgiveness, and then a real stewardship of the energy they do have and the possibilities that lay before them. And then, just to finish the analogy, Jung talked about late life, kind of the 55 plus. Erickson calls it like integrity versus despair. Like, it's where people assess how much did they live their life out of love and integrity. And it's not that people in their 60s don't start amazing entrepreneurial businesses, but generally it's a different season of life, and they may, often they do, and that's wonderful. But a lot of people, it's more of an inner process to coming to a real peace of their life and deep forgiveness if they've erred heavily. So I love these questions because they're like, it can only be answered in generalities like that. Like, it depends on who's sitting in front of me.
Totally. Awesome, brother. Well, if you guys want to know more about Matt, you guys want to have a conversation with him, he has a website, mlcda.com. That's M as in Mary, lcda.com. You guys connect with him on Facebook, facebook.com/Matt with 2 T's, .Laughlin.75. I know you have a training coming up at some point. I know you don't have a date on it, but if you guys go connect with him on Facebook, you guys can find more information about that when it drops. So Matt, dude, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you, homie.
Thank you, AJ. It was awesome. I enjoyed it.
Well, there you have it, my friend, Matt Laughlin. I could sit here and talk to Matt for weeks, months, years. Like, I could talk to the guy forever. And I feel like this was such an important conversation to have because a lot of what we covered will totally help you find the right coach who is right for you. And I don't feel like the coaching industry is doing a very good job at helping people know how to really hire a bona fide coach. And before we go, I just want to say there's a difference between a coach, a trainer, and a mentor. Like, a good coach is going to dive deep with you to help you see the blind spots that you didn't even know were there. And as a result, they can help open you up to a possibility that you can then step into, resulting in a quantum leap in every single area of your life. Now, a trainer, on the other hand, is going to teach you a specific skill set that you can just like go out and execute on. And many trainers, they like call themselves a coach. Now, I'm not saying that they're wrong. It's just a distinction that I believe needs to be made. It's kind of like in American football. You have the head coach, you have an offensive line coach, a defensive line coach, etc. And so to me, if you're looking for like a coach, what you want is really that head coach. And if you're looking for someone to help you learn a specific skill set so you can like collapse some time, then just know that you're looking for that right offensive line coach, right? You're looking for a specialist who calls themselves a coach, yet they're more of a trainer, and they're training you to be the best at that specific thing. So keep that in mind as you're looking for coaches as well. And the last thing I want to talk to you about is a mentor. See, a mentor is someone who's been down the path that you want to go down. They have the results that you desire to have. A mentor is going to give you the exact playbook that they implemented. That way you can show up and then implement their plan, and mentors are great to have as well. I just wanted to talk about these 3 different types because these days it's kind of all lumped into quote unquote coaching. And I hope now that these distinctions really serve you. That way you can leverage these distinctions when deciding who to hire and what type of coach is really, going to serve you. So I thought that would help. Now, the biggest bummer about this specific episode is it's only about an hour long, and I really feel like we got into some big topics. I mean, we didn't really have enough time to explore some of the things that, that all the way, because we'd be here for hours if we do that. And as you may know, this podcast is all about helping you break through to a whole new level of freedom, purpose, and success. And I definitely felt like there was a lot more in this episode that I could have talked about to help you with this. So the good news is I'm hosting a free online training all about the 3 ancient secrets my clients are using to break through to new levels of peace, power, and profits. And during that training, we'll explore the timeless principles, scientific truths, and the spiritual experiences that will help you take a quantum leap in your life and business. And if you want in on this, simply head on over to trainingwithaj.com and grab your spot. I only have like 100 spots available and people are already signing up. So just go to trainingwithaj.com to sign up for that now. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Anthony John Amyx podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, my friend, I'm out. Peace.
Well, that's all I've got for this episode of the Anthony John Amyx podcast, but we have plenty more to help you become unstoppable in life and business. So head on over to ajamyx.com for exclusive resources, information, and tools to help you break through to a new level of freedom, purpose, and success. I look forward to having you back for the next episode. Bye for now.